In the next phase of my Swarm project, I need to arrange things so that I can start either the original software on PowerUp or the moisture sensor software on startup. And my plan is to do that by having a push button, which when I press it will, when I power up and press simultaneously, will run the moisture sensing software. If that push button is not pressed during power up, it'll go back to the original software. But I'm going to test that out here by duplicating the Feather microcontroller and OLED stack that's in the Eval Kit with this other Feather that I have and OLED screen, which is right there. And that requires a lot of soldering here. I have to solder these female headers onto the Feather microcontroller and these male headers onto the screen so that I can then plug the screen into the female headers on top of the microcontroller, making a stack. And that's exactly what's inside the Eval Kit. And then I have to find a way to wire two of those pins to the push button here, and of course ultimately it'll be a weatherproof push button, and I'll have drilled a hole in the casing of the electronics box and be able to start it in either mode. But some soldering to do here and then some testing. I just want to make sure that my idea for a program which will accomplish all of that will actually work. So soldering iron is all heated up, 650 degrees, ready to go. Well, here's the completed stack. The Feather microcontroller on the bottom with its female header pins soldered in, and the OLED screen on top with its male header pins plugged in, and the whole thing sandwiched together. And push button here soldered to ground on one side and to one of the input pins of the microcontroller on the other. And hope is that this little short program will detect whether the push button has been pushed or not and held down. And if the button is pushed, then it will open up, read, and execute another program called Code 1, which would correspond to my moisture sensing program. And if the button is not pushed while the microcontroller is being powered on, then it will open, read, and execute Code 2.py, which would correspond to the original program, which sets up a Wi-Fi network and allows connecting with the whole thing using Telnet or a web page to send email, for example. So that's going to become the new Code.py. That's the program that the microcontroller looks for and executes if it finds it when it powers up. And then Code 1 here for my test is just going to do a fast blink of the LED that's built into the microcontroller board, and that's if the button is pressed. And then here, if it's not pressed, we're going to get the slow blink. So all should depend on whether the button is being pressed and held down during power up. So we'll give this a try. I've developed, I hope I've developed a technique of doing all of this with one hand, pushing the USB connector in all the way to power things up while holding the push button. So I'm going to give it a try. I'm holding the push button. Nope, that's not it. I got to hold it with this finger and use these two fingers to push in the USB connector, and there we go. With the push button pressed down, we're getting the fast blinking. Program is being opened, read, and executed. Now we'll power it down. Just remove the USB connector, and then Power it up again without pressing the push button, and we will get the long, slow blinking. And that's where the project stands at this point. Hopefully I will soon load all of the software onto this new microcontroller and OLED and push button, and replace the original stack from the Eval Kit with this for testing purposes, and see if it will indeed switch back and forth that way between the two programs. If that's successful, then I will drill a hole in the electronics box and install a weatherproof push button that can be accessed from the outside, so not necessary in that case to open the electronics box up and do anything to switch between the two programs, the original software and the moisture sensing software. I experienced a minor setback in the Swarm project here. It turns out that this extra feather microcontroller that I've been using to test out my idea for switching between the moisture sensing program and the original email sending program has a slightly different pinout than the original one. It's a newer model that has some extra features than the original one that's in the Eval Kit. So it wouldn't work plugged into the Eval Kit here. So I had to remove the original one and solder a push button to it to get it to work. So here we'll illustrate that. We'll fire this up without pushing the push button, and what will happen, basically what we'll see is nothing, because the moisture sensing program does not use the OLED screen as a power conserving measure. It's going to be out somewhere conducting measurements every hour maybe and sending them off by satellite for a long period of time, and maybe times when there's not a lot of sunshine on the solar panel, so don't want to be wasting energy with a display that nobody's looking at. So we see that the moisture sensing program started up here. We'll just turn it off now. And now this requires more trickery than I have got in order to, with a single hand, push the push button and the push button here and the power start, the power up button there. So we'll set the camera down here and give it a try this way. So we have to push this in, and it has to stay pushed in for a while. So we'll do that. Got it pushed in, I think. Yeah. And now we have the OLED display. It's upside down, unfortunately, here. It's connecting to the modem, and it's printing out some information. It prints out the URL, 192.168.4.1. If you find the Swarm Wi-Fi network on your device and connect to it, then you punch in that URL into your device, and you'll get a web page that allows you to fill out a form for an email. Or my preferred method, I can connect via Telnet using PuTTY and create the email from scratch. That's just for fun. So we've got two different programs starting up depending on whether the push button is pushed. Now the next step will be to get a weatherproof push button and figure out where to drill a hole in the plastic electronics box here, or in its lid maybe, I'm not sure which, and then that would complete this portion of the Swarm project.